Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and continue.
That appearance of body mind, it comes and I say I am that. All right. This is the application of the definition. Further analysis, Professor Mani Dravid Shastri draws upon another commentator. There's a book called Prakatartha Vivarana. Prakatartha Vivarana, this is in one commentarial tradition on Shankaracharya called the Vivarana school. We will see that in the stories later on. So this Prakatartha Vivarana, it's like a major text of this particular sub-school of Advaita Vedanta, written by a monk called Anubhuti Swarupa Acharya, who lived a few centuries after Shankaracharya, but nothing much is known about him. So there, he, from drawing from this source, Professor Mani Dravid Shastri, you'll see in those notes, it's there. He gives a very forensic analysis of this definition. Remember the definition, the 4 words, and then we'll jump into it and see how he uses these 4 words to understand Adhyasa. And this is, the source is Prakatartha Vivarana. In short, it's called Prakatartha. What he says is, these 4 words, Smriti Rupa, like memory, Paratra, elsewhere, Purva Drishta, having seen something earlier, Avabhasa, experience is coming now. These 4 words, where he says that if you just say Purva Drishta Avabhasa, you see what he's trying to do is show why each of these 4 words is key. Why each of these 4 words is very important for the definition. So if you just say Purva Drishta Avabhasa, what was seen earlier is now again being experienced. What was seen earlier is now again being experienced. You saw a snake earlier, now you're experiencing the snake again. But then the problem will be, this applies to memory also. So memory is something, a recurrence of something that you have seen earlier. You saw a beautiful garden in some place. Now you sit in your room and close your eyes and recollect the garden. That's memory. Purva Drishta Avabhasa. What you saw is coming up in your mind again. But that's not superimposition. It's that man who made a mistake about the rope and snake is not sitting quietly and remembering a snake. Oh, what a terrible snake it was. No. If you ask him, are you remembering a snake? He said, no, I'm seeing a snake. There, it's in front of you. Be careful. So, Purva Drishta Avabhasa, if you just say this word, Purva Drishta, it becomes memory. It's not superimposition. It's not Adhyasa. So, he says, who says? This Prakatartha Vivaranakara, this author. He says, now for that you have to add one more word. Smriti Rupa, like memory, but not memory. It's like memory, but not memory. When the man makes a mistake about a snake in a rope, it's like memory. When we are analyzing, in a distant, we are sitting quietly and analyzing. Yes, it's like memory because he recalled his old conditioning about the snake and projected it there, but it's not memory. So the word like memory is interjected there, is put in there. All right. Then there is another phenomenon called recognition. In Sanskrit, pratyabhijna, recognition. So you see Bob. You've seen him many times earlier, but you haven't seen him for many years. Now you suddenly see Bob, and you say, "Oh, that's Bob." This is recognition, and so recognition means a person you have seen earlier, Purva Drishta. You have seen this person earlier, and Smriti Rupa. Smriti Rupa is like memory. Recognition is not memory. Recognition is when you see that person again, you recognize. Oh, this is that person. You're actually seeing somebody. So it's like memory, and it's something that has been seen earlier, but it's not a mistake. You see, recognition is not a mistake. We recognize places, we recognize things, we recognize people all the time. So recognition is not a mistake. So this will not do as a definition of mistake. You see where this is leading, why each term is important.
Real quick with that one, actually. So it's because he could see the person very clearly that he recognized them. But we've also seen someone that's kind of far away that we think we recognize, but it's not. So oh, that's Bob. When you get a little closer, it's, oh crap, it's not Bob. So in that scenario, is that superimposition as well. where you thought you saw someone that you know, but then when you get closer to look, I guess it's kind of is, isn't it? It's like, oh, that's Bob. And you get closer, like, oh, it's, no, it's not. It looks like him, but not him. So, yeah, superimposition as well. But I guess it's that the problem is, in terms of this, is the fact that when you say that is, when he's given this example and saying that's Bob, it's very, very much without a doubt, no question. When you see the rope, there's no doubt, no question. When you the superimposition part is whenever you see something, and it's only when you're wrong that it's superimpositioned. So that's Bob. You get a little closer. That's not Bob. Or that's a rope. Or that's a snake. And you get closer. It's like, oh, that's not a snake. It's a rope. So far, that's the understanding I'm getting. It's when it's clearly a mistake, not whenever when I guess you're calling it out at the first time. Because when you see a snake, and then when you see something far away, it's like, oh, that's a snake. And you get a little closer. Oh, it is a snake. And you don't know until you know it's a superimposition. So I guess the important factor here is knowing without a doubt. I suppose knowing without a doubt. When you see Bob, it is in fact Bob, and you go talk to Bob. Did you see it's a snake? But when you get closer, it is in fact a snake, and you run away from the snake, or you pet the snake, or whatever you want to do with the snake. That's your pet snake just walking about or something. So the thing is to be clear whether you're right or wrong about what you see, it seems.
So smriti rupa purva drishtavabhasa, seeing something like memory which has been experienced earlier, it will apply to recognition also. Recognition is also seeing something which has been experienced earlier, and it's like memory. What is the difference between memory and recognition? In memory, you're recalling something experienced earlier and doing it entirely in your mind. That person or place is not present in front of you. I am remembering him, I'm remembering that place, I'm remembering that book, remembering that poem. So that's memory. What's recognition?
Oh, okay.
Here is that person who I saw earlier. So memory is involved there, but also the person is actually present.
Okay.
That is recognition. And that place is actually present. You are seeing that place again. So recognition and memory, both are not mistakes. In order to exclude recognition and memory, we use one more term, paratra. What is not there is being seen. Recognition, what is recognition? Bob is there, and we are recognizing that, oh, I had seen this person years ago. Now I recognize you are that person.
I assume it can be like, oh, that book is there. I remember seeing that book earlier. Now it's over here, as opposed to over there. Or the fact that you go to a different bookstore, it's like, oh, that book's over here too. You recognize the book from the other bookstore. Inanimate objects as well, I assume.
You're not remembering Bob. You're not making a mistake about Bob. You're recognizing Bob, who's there. But a mistake is that that person is not there, but you think it's there. That snake is not there, but you make a mistake, it's there. So in that case, that's why one more word has been introduced, paratra. Paratra means elsewhere, where it is not there. Three phenomena. We are doing something subtle here. Three phenomena are being taken up. What is that? Memory, recognition, mistake. Memory, recognition, mistake. And we want to isolate and define mistake. We don't want to talk about memory, or we don't want to talk about recognition. Adhyasa is mistake, superimposition. Superimposition, mistake, adhyasa, same thing. How is adhyasa different? How will you define adhyasa, superimposition, or mistake so that it's different from memory and recognition? That's why you must use all these four words. It's not just an experience. Avabhasa means an experience. But it's an experience based on something in the past. Purva drishta. But that could be memory also. So it's like memory, but it's not memory. Smriti rupa. But that could be recognition also. That's why it's like memory, smriti rupa, purva drishta, avabhasa, but also paratra, where it is not there. Recognition is something which is there. But recognition, this is not there. Snake is not there. We are seeing a snake. So all the four terms are justified. It's an experience, avabhasa. It's based on past conditioning, purva drishta. It's like memory, smriti rupa. And it's about something which is not there. It's a mistake, paratra. So smriti rupa, paratra, purva drishta, avabhasa. A little more information quickly before we go ahead. To have a mistake, one requires three things.
Three things. Something similar to it. Something that you remember from it. To make a mistake. To acknowledge it. A memory of it. To acknowledge it. I don't think I can think of. Because if you don't acknowledge it, then there's no mistake. If you don't have a prior memory, then you don't know what it is. That's the only two I can think of.
To make a mistake, one requires three things. What are these three things? One requires a defect, in Sanskrit called dosha, defect or problem. In this case, ignorance will be the problem.
No, okay. That's straightforward.
Sense organ contact, samskara. Let me put it this way. To make a mistake about a rope as a snake, one requires three things. First of all, one must have a defect like an ignorance. I don't know it's a rope. That's primary. I don't know it's a rope. If I knew to begin with it's a rope, I wouldn't make the mistake. So dosha, first thing is dosha, defect. What defect? Ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance that it's a rope. Ignorance that it's Brahman. Second, I require some experience, contact. So in this case, I must see the rope with my eyes. If I had my eyes closed, if the guy who made a mistake about a snake rope had his eyes closed, he wouldn't even see the rope and he wouldn't even make a mistake. So there must be some kind of basic knowledge. So in our case as Brahman, we must have this awareness of, names and forms and body, mind, all of this must come. Then a mistake will come that I am body, mind. And this is an external world because I don't know myself as not rope, as underlying awareness, as existence, consciousness, bliss. So some knowledge is required. Sense-object contact, second component. And third component is some samskara is required. Some past conditioning is required. The person must have seen a snake in a movie or a zoo or somewhere. So instantly that mistake happens. We have been conditioned somehow to act as limited beings, sentient beings, this body mind. It's a mistake because an enlightened person doesn't make that mistake. So we have been conditioned from many past lives.
I would assume it'd be backwards though, what he said. It'd be 3, 2, 1. One, you'd have to have prior knowledge or something to create a mistake in the first place. So again, if I had prior knowledge of what a rope and a snake is, and then when I'm walking out, then number 2 would take effect, the sense organs, which is I see something that looks like a snake, and I'm like, oh man, it's a snake. Then number 1 would take effect saying that, oh, it's my ignorance because I'm not close enough to know for sure. That's the ignorance part. I have to get closer to see for sure, or get a flashlight or something, to see it much more clearly.
There's a story which I like. One Pandit, a scholar, was arguing with a monk in the Himalayas. So this Pandit was he was a dualist, and the monk was a non-dualist. And the Pandit said to the monk, "Dvaita satya hai Mahatma ji. Oh monk, duality is right. That's true. That is right, not non-duality." Then the monk replied to him, I'll tell you in Hindi and translate. Dvait satya hai, ye to wo gau bhi janti hai. That cow also knows that duality is correct. Tu pandit hai to koi nayi cheez bata. That duality is right, duality is real, that I am different and the grass is different. The cow also knows it, and I must go and eat the grass. This duality is a common way of dealing with the world. It's natural to everybody. Now, if you are a pandit, if you are a great scholar and philosopher, tell me something new. Tell me something that the cow doesn't know. Then how are you a pandit otherwise? So this is the thing. So because of past so there is some defect, ignorance, there is some past conditioning, samskara, and there is some knowledge, some kind of contact. So these three things makes the person mistake a rope as a snake, And that's an example. And we, according to Shankaracharya, because of these three defects, these three things. First defect, what is the defect? Ajnana, ignorance. Ignorance about what? I am Satchidananda. I don't know that.
I will say this, going back to my example as well. Out of the three ones that you list, number one, number two, number three, these two are not required. Prior experience or your sense organs. Ignorance is always there, though, because no matter what, you're always ignorant of something. So I'm making that statement here as I was thinking about what he's saying, because you don't have to have prior knowledge to be ignorant of something. You don't have to have your sense organ to be ignorant of something. You could just still be ignorant. That's not a hopeful thing to look at, but it's true. Ignorance is always there, amazingly. But because of prior knowledge and sense organs, you're more aware of your, well, I wouldn't say you're more aware of your ignorance. Perhaps it makes you more ignorant. That's not a good thing. But anyways, regardless of these two are not necessarily needed for you to be ignorant, as far as I can tell, as far as my thinking has done in the past few minutes as he was talking. You don't have to have any, you don't have any prior memory, knowledge, or sense organs to be ignorant. Because if you're blind, then you're ignorant of your visual surroundings. If you're deaf, you're ignorant of your audio surroundings. So again, but I guess, you know, when you lack those, you're ignorant of those things. That makes sense to me, at least.
That's the defect. Then what is the samskara? Many past lives of conditioning as sentient beings going through life and death. This is the samskara. We deal with things as subjects and objects all the time. And then what is the knowledge which we have? Our daily experience of life. You know, we see, hear, smell, taste, touch. We are aware of names and forms, body, mind. That's enough to make a mistake that I am this and all of these are separate from me. And then samskara starts for me. Anyway, the point here is, for adhyasa, for a mistake to happen, three components are necessary. Dosha, that indriyartha sannikasha they call, sense-object contact, and samskara, past conditioning. These three together give you the basis for, you are now primed for making a mistake. You're ready to make a mistake now. You're well equipped to make a mistake.
So, and I guess that's the reason why ignorance is the number one thing that I seem to notice in Advaita Vedanta and, is it Buddhism as well? The lack of knowledge of your true form is the reason why you are suffering. Because again, even without sense organs or your past experiences, you will always have ignorance. Until you beat that ignorance, you're ignorant. You'll not be enlightened. So these two are not required, but these two doesn't exactly help either. Doesn't help you remove ignorance. As a matter of fact, they probably hinder you, and maybe that's the reason why, in terms of Advaita Vedanta, your karma, jnana, very, very particular. It's straight to who you are, what you are. But in terms of karma, your actions, that's the reason why you devote it to something else other than yourself. That, let's say, you remove ignorance, but you remove suffering. Because because you're acting towards a higher goal, and not a goal of not a selfish goal. Then Raja Yoga, which again, they don't explain too much. I've seen a few videos on that, but it seems like more along the lines of quieting your body, your emotions, and your mind. Karma, bhakti, and jnana. And that's how I phrase it. So bhakti is not exactly your emotions, but I've heard it said like that with Swami Chinmayananda. At least that's how I interpreted it. Anyways, and that's the reason why Raja Yoga is quieting all of those, where you no longer have your memory or your sense organs, and you're just down to your ignorance.
All right.
Perhaps. That's my guess.
Now, what else do I want to say? Okay. Another commentator, which is the Bhamati commentator, I'll mention, we have a story about that also coming up, makes this, he comments about the definition. He says, avabhasa, the term appearance or experience, he says it is a knowledge which is discarded later. His definition of the term avabhasa is knowledge discarded later. What's the knowledge? There's a snake, and it's discarded later. When you become enlightened, it's not a snake, it's a rope. Then this is a good time to introduce this superimposition has two aspects to it. It's an important way of understanding superimposition. They are called Arthadhyasa, Jnanadhyasa. I'll translate into English. Arthadhyasa means object superimposition. Jnanadhyasa means cognitive superimposition. And again, very simple. Let me use the example, it'll become very clear. When I say that this is a snake, my thinking that, oh, there is a snake. That is Jnanadhyasa. What should be the correct thinking? There is a rope. That's a rope. That's correct. And I make a mistake in my mind, in my understanding, and say, there is a snake. This is called superimposition in cognition, in my knowledge. But there is something called object superimposition. See, make it very clear. The object out there, which is actually a rope, is mistaken for another object, which is a snake. A snake projected in error. So not only I'm making a mistake in my mind, my knowledge is wrong, but I am seeing something wrongly outside. So, for example, when it is corrected, when this person realizes it's not a snake, it's a rope, what does he say? He doesn't say that, oh, I was thinking it's a snake, but now I'm thinking it's a rope. No, his first reaction, if you closely follow the correction, this first reaction will be, oh, that's not a snake, that is a rope. Look at the words, that is talking about the object there. That object there was a snake. Now he realizes it's not a snake. That object there is a rope. So the object in Sanskrit, artha. One object is superimposed on another object. This is called arthadhyasa. And one cognition is mistaken knowledge, that is called jnanadhyasa. Mistaken cognition, mistaken object. What this commentator does is, he uses the word smriti. Smriti means memory. In the definition, it's there, smriti rupa paratra purva drishta avabhasa. So smriti, memory, what he does is, a little bit of etymological derivation here. Smriti can be derived in two ways in Sanskrit grammar. Smaryate iti smriti. That which makes us remember is called memory. So that object which makes us think it's a snake, that's one way of looking at it. So that is arthadhyasa, object superimposition. Let me repeat. The word smriti in Sanskrit can be derived as smaryate, that which makes you remember. That which made me remember a snake. So we are talking about the object there. That mistake, that object, that we make a mistake about that, so that's referring to arthadhyasa, object superimposition. The other way of deriving the word smriti, memory, is smaranamiti smriti. So remembering, the act of remembering is smriti. It's an entirely cognitive approach. So it's referring to jnanadhyasa, the mistake in the level of understanding. No big deal, but I'm just showing you how carefully Shankaracharya's words, choice of words, just one word, the commentators tease out different meanings. Here is a commentator who is using the word smriti, memory, in two ways to bring out the two aspects of mistake, the object side of it, the cognitive side of it. Arthadhyasa, jnanadhyasa, by two derivations of the word smriti. All right. Now, Shankaracharya, I'll skip ahead. Shankaracharya gives a couple of examples of adhyasa. One paragraph later. This paragraph which I'm skipping, just one word about it. So once you define what an error is, what a mistake is, superimposition is, and you go through all the words of that definition, smriti rupa, paratra, purva drishta avabhasa, then the big question comes is, what is an error? What are the mechanics of an error? How does a mistake happen? And there are multiple theories of this. Traditionally, 5 theories are considered. So these theories of error in Indian philosophy and epistemology are called khyati, the khyati vada. the debate or the discussion about how things appear in mistakes. So the discussion is not a mistake, it's about mistakes. It's a very, very convoluted, very subtle discussion. So every philosopher, every school has its own theory, particular theory of error. And then the non-dualist Advaitin has to take up and discuss each of these theories of error and discard them in the favor of its own theory of error. We too have a theory of error, which fits what Advaita wants to say.
Real quick before it goes over that, that's my assumption of theory would be survival. It's very basic in terms of nature. You know, before we have this kind of consciousness, we were, at least in my belief, we were animals, much like anything else, and we act on instincts. You know, we see something, we assume the worst case, because if it is, then we survived, hopefully. If you don't assume the worst case and it is, you are likely dead. So that's the reason why I think the mistakes happen, is because we can't, well, the mistakes happen because we can't quite clearly identify what it is. And the next thing's why we make that assumption, that superimposition, is because we want to, our brains, our survival instinct, whatever you want to call it, superimpose something negative. Generally speaking, if it can be assumed to be something negative, we will make that assumption. But it is, of course, based on past experiences as well. If you go into your a garage, a workshop, right, and you need a hose, so you see something coil up, you're like, oh, I'm gonna grab it, and you grab it, then it's a snake that bites you. You assumed it was a coiled hose because, one, you don't see snakes around that area, even though there are snakes, but it's never been in there, and it looks like a coiled rope, and your assumption is that it's a coiled rope because that's, you know, it's a workshop for cars or whatever, and there should be a coiled rope somewhere, and you made that assumption. The reason why you didn't assume the worst is because, generally speaking, this area that you're at is safe, so you don't necessarily assume the worst. But when you hear something fishy, or snaky, I guess, but at that point, then you'll assume the worst. But other than that, generally speaking, you've been in this, you've made this area very comfortable, very safe in your mind, so that way you don't necessarily assume the worst. But if you go into a place, of course, that you've never been into, or that's dark, even in your safe area that's dark, generally speaking, I guess you could teeter to both safe and not safe. But it's, again, it goes to prior experience, whether you go in there because you heard something bad and you're going to investigate, you're going to assume the worst in everything. If you're going in there because you need to grab something, you're not necessarily going to be assuming the worst of anything, because there's nothing to worry about. Nothing prior to you going there made you assume there's something bad there, because your prior knowledge to that place has always been safe. Until that prior knowledge becomes unsafe, you will continue to go there assuming it is safe. I hope that makes sense. And that's my theory. It could be wrong, but I think that's pretty true, at least in that part.
So what are these theories of error? Primarily, there are 5 which are usually discussed. So I'll just name them. I will not go into them. You can heave a sigh of relief. The main theories of error in Indian philosophy. Atmakhyati. This is the theory of error propounded by the Buddhist Yogachara Vijnanavada, which is one of the philosophies of Tibetan Buddhism, for example. So Yogachara Vijnanavada, this is a theory of Buddhist idealism. Their theory of error is called Atmakhyati. I will not translate. Then Asatkhyati, or let me translate. Atmakhyati is the appearance of the self. And remember, this is the theory of error propounded by the Buddhist subjective idealist. This is enough. And these terms are enough for a person trained in philosophy to sort of understand what that theory must be. But then you require not a PhD, but at least a graduate degree in philosophy, Indian philosophy, to grasp just from this. You know, it's interesting how training helps you. Once, many years ago, I was studying Western logic. So there was this textbook of symbolic logic. I was fascinated by it, and very nice textbook, big, thick textbook with nice pictures and all of that, tables and stuff, truth tables and stuff. So I showed it to my friend, who is a famous mathematician. He's a monk. So I showed it to him. I was telling him, this is a really good book. It's teaching me modern symbolic logic. And I started telling him, and he said, he was very impatient. He said, stop that. Just give me the book. And he took the book and he opened to the back of the book. You know, in many math books, and there's a cheat sheet at the back, just a formula given. Just the formula. No, he looked at the formula, just one page of formula, looked through it for a couple of minutes. He said, okay, got it. I said, what do you mean got it? There are 400 or more than 400 pages in this book. He said, that's it, too many words, too many words. I don't want so many words. So for a highly trained mind like that, just to see the formula, he's really got it. Whatever is there in the book, whatever has to be said, he's got it. But for us, we have to go through all the explanations and examples and stories and so on and so forth. He just needs the formula. So here, Asat Khyati is the theory of error propounded by the Madhyamaka Buddhist. Nagarjuna's philosophy, the philosophy of His Holiness the Dalai Lama school of Tibetan Buddhism and so on. So that's Asat Khyati means projection of nothing, the void. Nothing appears as all of this. Akhyati, that is non-apprehension. So this is the Mimamsa school which has this theory of error. These are theories of error, not theories of truth, theories of error. The Mimamsa school, and that's also one particular school of Mimamsa called the Prabhakara school. And the meaning of Akhyati is non-apprehension. You can easily make out what they want to say. Error is because you can't tell the difference between the false snake and the real rope. Non-apprehension of the difference. The difference you can't tell. The false snake, which is a conditioning, a memory in your mind, and the real rope which you are seeing, you can't tell the difference. And that's why you make a mistake. Does that make sense? Your mind is really strongly conditioned. Little kid, his mind is strongly conditioned seeing ghosts. And then in the evening, in the dark, he sees a shadow in the garden. And he gets scared. That's the ghost. Now, according to this school, what happened was the conditioning in his mind and the external shadow which he saw, he couldn't tell the difference between the two. And that's why he got scared. It's a pretty sophisticated theory. Anyway, now I've started explaining the theories.
That's good.
Then number 4, Anyatha Khyati. Seeing something else that was seen elsewhere, seeing it here. And not knowing that it's elsewhere. So you see silver. The classic example is a person who saw silver in a jeweler's shop, and she sees a shining object out there on the sea beach and doesn't know it's a seashell. He thinks it's silver. So he's actually seeing what he saw in the shop. Elsewhere seen here. That's the mistake. This is another way of showing a mistake. And finally, Anirvachaniya Khyati, the 5th theory of error. That is our theory, the Advaita Vedanta. It says, what you see as a snake is actually a projection. It's not a mistake. It's not something seen elsewhere and all of that stuff. It's actually a projection, like a movie, like a dream. Yeah, so it's not reality like Brahman, but it's not that something, it doesn't exist at all, not completely unreal also. So this whole world is anirvachaniya, cannot be expressed as ultimately real, cannot be expressed as non-existence also. Sad asad bhyam anirvachanyam. Sat means ultimately real. Only Brahman is ultimately real, and you are that Brahman. Asat means doesn't exist at all. But this world and Maya are sat asat bhyam anirvachanyam, cannot be designated as absolutely real, cannot be designated as non-existent. And that's not weird. I mean, what's a movie, for example? What's a story? What's a snake in a rope? It's not real. The things in the movie are not real. The snake there is not real. Story is, Harry Potter is not real. But is it nothing? Of course not. Movies are a multi-billion-dollar industry. If it were nothing, it's not nothing. It's fiction. It's a projection. So Shankara says this world is Maya. This is a common statement in India. Every other villager in every Indian language will say once in a while, it's sab Maya, it's all Maya. But this is Advaita Vedanta's position. It's a projection. Not that this world doesn't exist, but not that it's the ultimate reality. This is the thing. All right. So these are the different theories of existence.
Okay, I'm going to pause right there. So that's not to say that this world is not real. It is real, but it's Maya. So this is more along the lines of what how do I say? I guess the theory that I like is that this is real. It's just a misunderstanding. We misunderstand that this is what matters. I guess maybe, yeah, maybe we misunderstand. I think maybe we misunderstand life, thinking that life are just materialistic things when it's not. I don't know. Again, I still like to believe that this world is real. To say that it's a misunderstanding, perhaps. But the problem is, how do I define how is it a misunderstanding? If I were to say this world is real, the objects in this world are real, but we just misunderstand these objects. What do I mean by that? I was able to define it before, kind of, but video over with me talking now. I was able to define it before, as in, you know, the ultimate reality is existence. Without that, nothing exists. So that's how I define misunderstanding of the universe, is that as though us as individuals, that the reality is just around us and only around us, because anything else outside of that does not exist, or it's not reality to themselves because it's not going to affect them. So to an individual person, reality or existence is what they experience and nothing else. Because if you don't ever experience it, it's not your reality. It makes sense, right? I mean, let me know. So far, it seems to make sense. What you experience is reality. Anything that you do not experience is not reality. So, but the misunderstanding there is the fact that reality is more than just your existence. It's grander, perhaps. Maybe I'm just coming up with some BS right here, right now. Or maybe another interpretation of it. But I mean, it's very true though. You only ever whatever you only ever experience is your reality. That's very true in my opinion. But it's not to say that, you know, outside of your experience, reality doesn't exist. Obviously, well, obviously, maybe, I don't know. Is it obvious that it still does exist outside of your experience? It's not. Really, it isn't. Because if you don't experience it, you don't know if it's true or not, right? This goes back to freaking me talking to my coworker about, you know, Matrix, and this could be very well a computer simulation. And for I know, I'm just talking to a whole bunch of computers right now, a whole bunch of computers watching me and typing up on the comment section. And for all you know, maybe I'm just a computer generated making this content that you're watching, and it's something for you to experience, you know. Oh man, but anyways, I really have to think about that one. But again, like I've said this before, I like to think of this reality as real, but in terms of what is absolute reality, or what the absolute reality was, the fact of what we are all made out of. Whether it be a very specific atom that exists in existence, that without it does not exist, that being the absolute reality, or something else. I really have to find that definition for myself. Anyways, that's my reaction to Adhyasa, Bhashya Part 2. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down, down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.